There we go. I'm recording. So I wanted to add to our download. Yesterday we finished doing an async request, and it actually went out, did our basic authentication, passed that information, and we got back a JSON object string. And we'll parse that later. But I wanted to continue on with this and show you how to do a progress bar for time-consuming tasks. So we can add that to our code here. We can add a widget of a progress bar to our layout. So let's put that's interesting. I have a problem with my app name. I don't know. Apparently not. Well, we'll fix that later. Anyway, we'll have, I'm going to drag a progress bar, good old drag and drop, right? A horizontal progress bar, and we'll put it somewhere in here. And then we need to have, in our main code, we have to have a pointer to that. We have to get a property to that. So in our main activity code, just like we got pointers to our buttons and things, we're going to get a pointer to our progress bar. So I'm going to call this a progress bar type, and we'll call it progress bar to be nice and useful. Import the package that we need for that. Then we need to go access that. So our progress bar is going to be equal to a typecast progress bar find view by ID r.id.progress bar. How about that? Right? We know how to do that. Pretty simple. Then we need to have in our async task, remember that it had a bunch of different methods. One of them was do in background, and then we had an OnProgressUpdate and an OnPostExecute. In this OnProgressUpdate, we want to take some information, and here this method is being run in the UI thread, so it can access, just like the OnPostExecute, these two are run in the UI thread. So I'm going to put that in here, executed in UI thread. So because of that, I can access the progress bar directly. So first I'm going to call the super. It's always good to call the super with all of its information. And then I need to set the progress bar. It's very simple. I can just set some progress, and I give it a number. Usually, and I can set that in the widget. Usually it's between 0 and 100. So it's a percentage complete is what I like to think of it as. So I'm going to set this to whatever this gets passed in. So this is going to be passed in some number. And remember, what were these 3 dots meaning? You guys remember that? An array of integers, right? It was an array of integers. So I want the first one out of that array, and I'm just going to set the value. So whatever comes into this OnProgressUpdate, I'm going to call the set progress of this particular progress bar widget, and it will actually fill it in a little bit based on the percentage that you pass in. Well, you're passing it a number between 0 and 100. So it's going to fill in between 0 and 100. And I set that in the widget itself. I can set the max width. Where is it at? I forgot which property it is. Oh, max, I think here. lets me set, say I wanted 1,000, then I would pass in a number between 0 and 1,000. So the progress bar itself determines, based on the number you pass, how much percentage to fill in. So if I have 0 to 100, which is a default, and I pass in 20, it's going to fill in 20%. If I pass in 50, it's going to fill in half of the bar. Does that make sense? Okay. So to actually call this, I have to do this manually. I have to tell at some point in my code, as I'm getting information, I can tell it that I've gone through a couple steps. I've gotten some data back. I'm now going to start my progress, my parsing, things like that. So in my do in background, all I have to do is at certain points, I can start and notify this OnProgressUpdate by calling a method called PublishProgress. So at any point in here, I can call PublishProgress, and I pass it an integer of, say, 0. Okay, so I've done 0%, or I can pass 10%. What I did was I created this integer called progress that I assigned it as a 0 to start with. Then at certain points in this, I would increment my progress. So I'd say I'm going to add 25% to my progress. And then later on, after I actually get some data, I made the connection, I've read it into a string, I might call progress bar again, and that's going to increment another 25%. So at this point, I'm 50% complete. Then I might parse some data into my JSON object, which we'll do later. And then at the end of that, I might call that I'm 100% complete. So I'll add 50% to that. So at any point where I think it makes sense to tell the user that I'm still progressing, I increment a little bit of my progress bar to show that it's still working, rather than just hanging at a certain point. I can keep adding stuff. I could put a progress inside of here, for instance. As if I'm reading a really long database of multi-megabytes, then I might put a progress update in here, a percentage at a time. All right, does that make sense? So calling this publish progress is a method that will execute this method here. So publish progress executes this OnProgressUpdate in the UI thread. And it actually calls and sets the property of the progress bar. So let's run this. Oops, I didn't get my Genymotion running. All right, so we're running, I'm debugging this, and I'm going to break at these publish progress points. And here, very faintly, you can see this progress bar has nothing in it. It's not complete yet, right? So when I do the login, it's going to go through we'll execute to the next. We're going to get the login URL. We're going to call publish progress. And my, well, when I tell it to run again, it will, the problem, it updates the progress bar. So now I went past my publish progress again, and it's at 50%. All right, so every time I increment this progress bar, this will show up. And I stop it because this goes so fast that you don't see it very, very clearly. If I just ran this, it goes to 100%, and then we're done. Okay? So once we're done, what would be the obvious thing to do with this progress bar? Hide it, right? So we do that on the post execute. We might say, at this point, we're done with that long-running progress, so I want to tell my progress bar to go away. We don't want to destroy it. We just want to.
Why not destroy it?
We just want it to go away. So I'm going to say progress bar dot, not hide. Set, it's called set visibility. Of course, it's got to be very difficult, right? And we have to call progress bar dot get root view, so we know whose view it is, and then we call the invisibility property of that. They don't make it easy, do they? So at this point, this execution, this method gets executed when this do in background method completes successfully, all the way to the end here. This is what gets executed. So if I were to stop there and continue on, well, I have to restart it. All right, so we log in again. We're going to step through our connections, get our progress. Step through again, get some more progress, 50%. Go to the end, and this onPost execute is now executed because we finished, and this invisibility will go away. And now I don't have my progress bar at all. Isn't that great? So progress bars are pretty easy to add once you figure out how they work. So not too bad. Any questions on a progress bar there?
So you're finding that the default is 100?
Yes. Yes. And so that makes it easy because you can always scale any process into 100%. And if you just think of it as a percentage, then it's easy. And I'm just passing 1%, 2%, whatever. So I could actually go backwards, and I get up to 50%, and I pass in 25, it'll go backwards, back to 25%. So you might sometimes see progress bars that jump around. All right, any questions on a progress bar? Wasn't that fun? All right, so we're going to continue on. I wanted to now take this data that I got in the request. Remember, it was a JSON string of all of that data from my Battle server. This gives me, actually it was login. This is the data that I get back all as a JSON object. So that JSON string that I finally got after doing all of this buffered reading from the URL connection, this JSON data is a string that I can now parse and put into a object that I'm going to keep on my local Android device. So the first thing that makes sense is to create an object to store all that information in. So I've done that already. So I'm going to create a new file called gamer. It's going to be the gamer class. And I'm going to cheat and go get it off of my GitHub account because I used my handy dandy Ruby gem to convert and create all of the getters and setters that is so painful to write in Java. Oops, wrong one. It is public. This is public. Well, that goes against the whole point of information hiding, etc. So mine is in my source. Got to go all the drill down to find my file, and it's called gamer.java. So I'm going to copy all of this information. It's a lot. And put it into my file here. So just to show you, I took all of the properties from that JSON object, and I created a gamer class that has all this information in it. So it basically has all the properties that I get from the server. So I've got first name, last name, email, whether they're online, whether they're gaming, whether they're available, their avatar name, their path, all of the levels, coins, battles won, lost, etc. All of that is put into this gamer object. And then, of course, you have to create getters and setters for all of those. So there's 1,057 of those getters and setters. Or 47,000, right, David? There's 47,000. 17,000. I know there's some number that I use a lot. So that I generated with my Ruby program, which just made it nice. It just poofed it right out there. So this is where I'm going to store that information. Okay? Any questions on my gamer object? Just a simple, standard Java class that I'm going to store. I could store multiple gamers in here. All right? All right, so in my main activity, I'm going to... Now, ideally, I would do the parsing. Parsing takes a little bit of time as well. Ideally, I would do the parsing inside of this other thread that's happening, because it's going to take time. We might as well let the thread do all of that parsing for us, right? But because of the way I set this up, my parsing actually ends up being in my post execute. And I don't want to change it right now. So the one thing I have to do is I have to return, remember my do-in background returns a server request object that I created that has the URL and some other error properties. At the end of my do-in background, I have to return that object, because that object then gets sent along to my post request object. So I could store other information inside of my SR object, such as all of that JSON string, etc. Right? So I'm going to do that in my SR. I'm going to call the method set JSON data result, which is my method. It's not an Android method. That's part of my server request class. Remember, I had the server request class, and I have in there a place to store all of the data from my JSON string that I got from the URL. So I just need to set that data, which is my JSON data string. All I'm doing is setting a string inside of this SR object. Following me there? So then inside of my post execute, I can get that string back out and parse it out here. But again, if I changed my SR class to have different data, I could have done the parsing inside the background task instead. But I didn't. So, too bad. So, in my
it's 9:00.
In my on post execute, this is now I set my progress bar to be done. I'm complete. I could actually do the parsing right here. So I need to, in a try block, of course, everything has to be in a try block. I'm going to create a new JSON object. This is now part of the Android classes, and I'm going to call it user. And we say new JSON object, and I'm going to pass it the data that is in that I got from the server. It's just a long string with curly braces and name, colon, strings, and all of that kind of properties. And where did I put that? I put that in my SR class. So I get that back out of my SR class. So I say sr.getDataResult. That gets me the string back. right? Everybody with me there? That creates an object called user. Excuse me. And I need to catch the error. That's the problem here. I need to catch exception. We'll just do a print stack trace. Because as it's parsing this information, it could get an error in the data that you get back. Which reminds me, as you're playing with this, it's useful to make sure that your data is correct, your JSON data. So there's a website out there called JSON Lint. Which is a JSON validator. And all I did, I'm going to copy the code and put it in, so it's going to validate that this is actually a JSON string. So I say validate, and I get, well, that's interesting. I get an error. It worked before. It is actually valid. I'm not sure why it's having trouble here. Maybe, no, this is the problem. Let's go back to here. Let's view this as source. The problem is that Chrome makes this different. So let's view this as source. Copy the source. That's the actual string that I'm going to get back. And now it's valid JSON string. Chrome tries to make it look pretty. I finished this. And I'm going to cheat. And go and get this here. I wrote it. It's my code. There's no cheating involved there. I don't want to write it again. Through the magic of filming here, I've got my whole current user object created. So for things like my level and my coins, I use the method getInt instead, because they're actually integer properties. Okay? So that's all I have to do to process a JSON object. It's fairly simple. I have to know what the object is, obviously. You have to know ahead of time what the data is in order to put it into a structure that we can get access to. So at this point, my gamer object is complete, and I can use that later on in the rest of my code. So let's see that actually works by breaking here. Let's see, let's break here. It's breaking. All right, well, whatever. Restart this guy. And here, all right, so we'll go ahead and run. Log in. It goes and gets my data from the server, publishes my progress, and gets all the way to where it's now in the post-execute. And so let's walk through this, creating my new user object. And let's look and see what that looks like. So let's add a watch point here. Current user. Where'd it go? Doesn't like it. There we go. So now you can see my object, my Java object, has available false, avatar name is Dr. Dave, my avatar path is at this location, etc. Got coins, etc. Everything is all stored in my current user object. And I can use that now to lay out different things. That's now on my user interface thread, my UI thread. I can start populating the rest of my screen with different information. All right, any questions on that so far? Isn't that fun? No questions? Just like fun, but not quite. It has all the intents of being fun. All right, so let's play around with the next concept. It would be nice. I have in here my avatar image path name, right? I showed you that was at avatars/davejones.jpg. So I need to go get that data, get that image from the server, so I can display it on my little Android device. Wouldn't that be nice? So I have a little picture of my avatar next to my game that I'm playing. So first of all, I need a place to put that. And so in my main code here, I'm going to add a no, I'm not doing live video. No way. Yeah, a little bit. So I'm going to add an image view to my page over here, and you can put this anywhere you want. I'm going to put it over here. And I'm going to give it a height and a width of 100 device pixels. Oops, what happened? All right, so this is my little picture where I'm going to go get the data, and I'm going to set the background of this image view to be the data that I get from the server. It's just a JPEG image, so I'm going to, squish it into that little box. All right. So I know the path name. I know my server name up here is at battlegameserver.com. And I'm going to go /avatar/ whatever that path name is that I got from the user object. But it's painful because this information here is already tied very specifically. This whole async task is tied so closely to just getting the user information. I can't really reuse this. It's very painful. I would typically have to write a whole nother JSON async task with all of the do-in background, etc. And it's very difficult to make this dry. All right, so I'm going to show you a different way using a library that I've found that makes this whole process much simpler. And it is called LoopJ.com, Android async HTTP. All right, so this is an asynchronous HTTP client library. So to use that, I need to download it just like I did the Google API, although this is a lot easier to get to work. But it handles all of the asynchronous HTTP requests, gives me data back. I can do gets and posts. I can do file uploads and downloads. It handles binary files very easily, images. So, and it's used by a lot of developers. It's actively being developed, so it's a good open source piece. And this is how you use it. We just have to download the file and import the package, and then this is all the code we need to write to go and get data back. So much simpler. Just so much simpler. But I wanted to show you that whole async concept because, first of all, I spent 4 or 5 days on it, and so you have to suffer through with me. But it's also a lot of the tutorials and things out there are using that async. That's the standard way that Android likes you to use, that Google likes. So let's go download that file. Download the jar file. And let's put it into our lib folder over here. I don't have a lib folder yet, so I have to create one. So let's create a new folder called libs. And then I'm just going to drag and drop that jar file into my libs folder. All right, just that easy. Isn't that nice? So now I've got my async jar file. I can now, let's copy and paste that code that he's given us here. into a method. We'll let's see. Let's do this. Let's do this at the end of my onConnect, because once I have my current user, I can make another connection to go, just like a browser has to do. When you make a connection, you have to make another connection to get all the CSS files, and you have to make another connection to get all the files, the images. So we have to make a connection for every single piece of information we get from an external server. So we'll do this in the onPostExecute method. We'll create this object and go and make a request for the picture itself. But we're almost out of time. Let's see if I can finish it in time. Now I still have to make add this library to my path of my project source. So I'm going to have to set the properties here. Add a library. That is in my libs folder. Battleship. Apply. OK. And now we can, we can import the property, do all the imports we need, and now we can write this code. Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to cheat again and go get this, because you're going to have all weekend and you won't. I wrote this method called download avatar image. And we'll just put that in my main class here. Import all of its things that it needs. You'll see how painful it is just to write this guy. And instead of this, I'm just going to call my download avatar image, and I'm going to pass it my current user with one of my nice little getters. This does all of that. Oh, this is called just image view, I think. Yeah. Right. So this should now go out, make this async HTTP client from the library, and it does a get using this binary HTTP response handler, which is what this is. So when it's successful, it's going to give me an array, a byte array of all of the image data. And then I have to go through this madhouse of copying the data into a bitmap and applying the bitmap to the image view. It's really kind of painful. But at least you can see all of that code here. And you can get it off of my GitHub account. Painful, Java, just painful, I'm sorry. So let's run this, and it should work. Oops, I got an error. No. So I have some error here. There we go. Excuse me. All right. So when I log in now, it should go get all the data, populate my little image view, download the JPEG from the server. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that nice? What? Very nice. Isn't that nice? Woohoo! It worked. It's amazing. That took, when I first got this going, this only took about 20 minutes as opposed to 3 days to get this whole doing background garbage working. It's insane. Whatever. A lot of time. I was sick that whole time, so it took me longer. It was. So that's it. There we go. Any questions on that? You're going to have to re-watch my video, I'm sure.
Only if you upload it to the right place this time.
Yeah, it should be. All right.